it was the idea that the government had no power of general warrants, meaning what the king used to do is order entire villages or neighborhoods or cities subjected to house-by-house searches, that instead you had to have this particular suspicion, reasonable cause, in fact, probable cause, that the person was engaged in some sort of wrongdoing before the state had the right to inspect their papers or persons. That is, in essence, the crux of the definition of privacy. And in so many ways, the debates we're having now were settled over 200 years ago when the government said, we don't have mass surveillance in this country. It's a violation of fundamental rights. The only kind of surveillance that is permitted, as Professor Chomsky said, is when the burden that's on the government is met by them going into a court and saying this particular individual has engaged likely, in all likelihood, in some sort of wrongdoing, and therefore we can invade their home, read their papers, and the like. But I want to just take a step back, because I think the question of what is privacy is a really critical question to ask. And the reason is because a lot of times people treat it as though it's this kind of abstraction. Like, we understand why physical needs, like the need for food or shelter or healthcare, are things that are these immediate, urgent needs that are fundamental to who we are. But a lot of people are really willing to be dismissive about the right to privacy, to treat it as this kind of distant, remote value that even for those of us who sort of think it's a good thing, we're not really willing to say that it's something we demand be protected. And I'm sure all of you in this room have heard the rationale that's used by people who want to belittle the right to privacy, and I bet you a lot of you even think it yourselves, which is the idea that, well, you know what, I'm not one of the bad people, I'm not planning any terrorist attacks, I'm not engaged in violent crimes, and therefore I don't actually have anything to hide. I don't mind if the government invades my privacy. And what's really fascinating about that I found over the last few years is that even the people who say that, the people who say they don't actually value their privacy, they don't actually mean it at all. And the proof of it is they do all sorts of things to safeguard their own privacy. I mean, we all have things to hide. There are things that everyone in this room would be willing to have their spouse or their best friend or their physician or their lawyer or their psychiatrist know, but would be mortified to have anybody else know. And the people who say they don't value privacy, they do things like they put and use locks on their bedroom and bathroom door. They put passwords on their email and their social media account. They do all sorts of things to ensure there's a place they can go in the world to think and reason and explore without the judgmental eyes of other people being cast upon them. This is really critical to human freedom. And, you know, you should do this experiment. It's something I've done every single time over the last 3 years when somebody said to me, you know what, I'm not a terrorist, I'm not a bad person, I'm not planning any crimes, I don't actually have anything to hide. I do the same thing every time someone says it to me, which is I take out a sheet of paper and I write my email address on it. And I say, here's my email address, and what I want you to do when you get home is I want you to email to me all of the passwords to all of your email and social media accounts, and like not just the nice, respectable ones from work in your name, but like all of them. And, you know, I just want to be able to troll through what you're doing online and publish it under your name, because after all, if you're not a bad person, you should have nothing to hide. And, you know, to this day, not a single person has taken me up on this offer. I check that email account really frequently. It's a very lonely and desolate place. And the reason is because we really understand instinctively, without this abstract debate, why privacy is so critical. We are social animals. We have a need for other people to know and see what we're doing, which is why we post things about ourselves online. But we also have the need to be able to do things without other people watching, because when other people are watching what you're doing, you're much more likely to engage in decision-making that's the byproduct of societal orthodoxies or external expectations and not a byproduct of your own agency and independence. And so when we lose privacy, when we allow ourselves to live in a society where we're susceptible to being monitored at all times, we lose a really critical part of what it means to be a free and fulfilled individual. And as Professor Chomsky was saying, we should not allow that to happen in any circumstance except when the government demonstrates there's a really compelling need.